And Mike McColl Jones will appreciate the fact that we did the weekend wrap. Well, I mean, we had to get to Mike, of course, but we did the weekend wrap in 3 parts, and that's the way to do a proper joke, isn't it, Mike McColl Jones? Thank you for joining us.
Hello, John. Hello, Simon. Hello, Ken.
G'day, Mike.
No, the joke, John, is in 2 parts.
Oh, is it?
Part 1 is ingeniously known as Part 1, and the second part is known, again ingeniously, as Part 2.
Well, somebody told me,
in
Mike...
Part 1, you give the audience all the information they need, not one word more, not one word less,
right,
because otherwise they'll pick the tag or they won't understand the joke. And Part 2 is where you literally pull the rug out from under their feet.
There's no Part 3?
That's Part 2. Part 3 is the audience.
Yeah, the applause.
No, but somebody told me, look, the right formula for a good joke is that it's like an Irishman, a Scotsman, and a Czech walk into a bar.
I understand what you mean, yes.
Yeah.
Three parts.
Yeah, kind
so
of.
we're both right, John.
Well,
there you go.
That would be sort of 1 for the setup, 2 to establish that form, and then 3 to throw it off, right?
Well, an example of the 2 parts, John, is you're driving along and a woman screams around the corner, pulls the window down and screams out, "Pig!" And you yell out, "Bitch!" And you turn around the corner and run straight into a pig.
Right, oh, thank God. All right, I was expecting the other tag. But this is, I mean, did you ever learn how to write a joke, Mike, or did it come naturally?
No, well, it didn't come naturally. I'm still working on it, actually. and August the 20th this year is 50 years for me writing jokes for various people.
You are an evil man, you know. Whenever anything catastrophic happens, Mike can actually see the funny side of it, can't you, Mike? And you do send out the odd little epistle to me and a few selected friends.
And get sick puppy or something in return.
Yeah, that's right. But is anything off limits for you, Mike?
Oh, well, obviously there are things off limits because I remember Graham and I used to discuss a lot of these things in his latter years, and particularly when he was in hospital and then the nursing home. And Graham used to refer to a lot, not all, but to a lot of new comics as no-tag comedy, where they would get to a certain point in the story they were telling and then drop a word. And that was considered comedy.
Yeah.
But you see, every joke has to have a beginning, it has to have a middle, and it has to have an end. There we go, the 3-part again.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was pointing at before. So everybody's fair game as far as you're concerned, because the joke.
No, there are obviously there are. I think it's personal choice more than anything else.
Well, I think no, but what I'm saying is, a joke writer, a comedy writer, has to be by nature a sort of person who is not afraid to say anything about anybody or anything, yeah?
Probably, John, yes, as you know. Well, I've just written down a few people here who make me laugh,
right,
and obviously there's so many that I will miss out on, but I'll just throw these in, and occasionally I've got an example for you.
All right, okay, good, all right.
Naturally, Graham and Bert.
Yes.
Graham and Bert made me laugh a lot. Even with my material.
By the way, how much material do you reckon you wrote and they threw out?
Well, with Graham, I used to write about 150 jokes a day.
Right.
And, well, it would depend, because that was what's new, that was the commercials, that was all sorts of things.
Yeah.
I always overwrite, as you would know,
yes,
because you have to give people, and that's why you see Graham didn't like team writing. Graham only liked individual writers, because each one had a different slant on whatever the subject was, and he wanted to see all the different ways you could do it. Whereas with team writing, which is an American thing, everyone's on the same page all the way.
Yeah.
And you can always tell the bludger in a team writing one. He's the one who volunteers to type.
But, you do have to be a bit thick-skinned, don't you? If you're going to be in the business of comedy writing.
Graham said to me soon after I'd started, he said, do you realise you've not only picked the worst profession to be in, which is show business, but the worst aspect of it in terms of comedy. So That was terrific to hear that after about 4 weeks there. But Dave Allen was someone I loved, and I did a series for him in Sydney.
Right.
He once told me that every time someone asked how he lost a finger, he made up a different story.
Yes.
How did he lose his finger?
I beg yours?
How did he lose his finger?
He had it ripped off by dynamite.
Oh. I don't know her.
I owe you, Dave, you owe me one. Bob Hope, who was a brilliant exponent of the monologue.
Yes.
He had a lovely line when Khrushchev and Kennedy were at each other's throats, or allegedly. He used to say, actually, Kennedy and Khrushchev are good friends. It's just that their interpreters can't stand each other.
I think this. I don't know whether this is an apocryphal story or not, Mike. But the morning after Kennedy, JFK got shot, Philip Brady was heard to comment. Oh, you haven't heard that one.
It was a cab driver in South North.
Oh, was it? Oh, sorry, I thought it was.
Someone got into the cab and said pity about Kennedy being shot, and I think the line was, well, at least Bert Newton get a chance.
Yeah, that's right. I thought it was Philip Brady that did that.
No,
but anyway,
no.
All these years I've been telling that gag, Mike, and
Well, it doesn't matter. You can just change it now.
and like when you hear, if you hear your material somewhere else, like up on stage.
I do all the time, John.
No, I'm not talking about me.
No, I'm not talking about you either.
Oh, no. But do you get a bit cheesed off that thing? Hang on, I wrote that. That's my joke. And do you sort of think they should attribute it to you?
No, John. You see, unfortunately, I happen to have lucked out on the worst aspect of show business, because if you write a song or if you record a song, you will receive royalties until and beyond your death.
Mm.
But with comedy, once the line is used, once it's out there, it's out there. That's the end of it, as you know, John.
Well, I mean, Stephen Wright must be, he must be gnashing his teeth, because I've heard so many Stephen Wright jokes that some, comics, well, they don't claim as their own, but they do it, just.
Well, there was a very famous comic out here who came out from England, whom I won't name, but who lifted an entire act. And that particular person, whom he listed the act of, decided to come to Australia one day and was warned against it, because he said, there's this guy out there who's you. And if you go out there, they'll all say that you've knocked off his act.
Wow.
I think I know who that might be as well. Phil's...
Philip.
No, Phil has mentioned to me that story.
Is he still alive? Can he sue, Mike?
Yes.
Oh, is he? Is he Australian? Oh, right. Yes. Okay. All right. Fine. Now, listen. Now, going through some of your favourite comedic people, getting back on track here.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned Bob Hope, Jack Benny.
Jack Benny was lovely. Jack Benny. Jack Benny came out to Australia and appeared at the Palais Theatre, packed Palais Theatre, at the height of the Beatles. Popularity. Yeah. And he walked out there and got a standing ovation before he spoke, before he did anything, and he just turned around and said, I feel like the fifth Beatle.
Oh, fantastic.
It was just a lovely line. I mean, it was an economy of words with Jack Benny too. He was once held up, he was walking down the street, and a crook came up to him and pointed a pistol at him and said, your money or your life? And Jack hesitated, which made the crook angry, and said, what's keeping you? And Jack said, I'm thinking about it.
That's funny.
Mike, would you say, I know it's a gross generalisation, but would you say English humour or American humour is better?
Oh, look, I think anything that gets a laugh. I like English humour. I like any humour that's funny, really. English humour is particularly wonderful with character actors and casting of in English shows. If you look at sketch comedy in English shows, everyone in the cast is perfectly cast. Yeah. Whereas in America they go for billing, so it's the person who is the bigger name gets the gig, whether he's suited to it or not.
So far, Mike, we've talked about male comedians. In the female comedian category, who makes you laugh? Who would be your... I
love Joan. I wrote for Joan for a while, Joan Rivers.
Yeah.
Rita Rudner, I liked.
Yes.
Paula Poundstone, who was an American comedian.
I'm sorry?
Paula Poundstone.
Yeah, right.
Yes. You thought I made that up, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I thought that was like Marilyn Merkenfer. I mean, you know, it's one of those made-up names.
Carol Burnett is very seldom mentioned, but she had a hugely successful variety show with great sketch comedy. Lucille Ball, of course.
I was about to say, what about Lucille Ball? She was groundbreaking, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
Roseanne?
Roseanne, yes, yeah. Roseanne.
Well, and here's one, Mike McColl Jones, who we're talking to about comedians and all that sort of stuff to do with comedy. Ellen DeGeneres. Now, I don't really find her all that funny.
No.
Right, okay. Now,
I'll tell you someone else I loved, Don Rickles.
Ah, yes.
Don Rickles, during the Arab-Israeli War, the Six-Day War in the 1960s, the late 60s, Don was performing in Vegas, and he spied a group of Arabs in the audience, and he asked them to stand up and take a bow. As they stood up, the spotlights hit them, and Don yelled out, "Jews, open fire!" Oh,
no, I know. He's so inappropriate. He's still around, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah. Yes. Lives in Malibu, I think.
He's still doing the same routines?
Well, they're not as sensational now, of course, because in those days because American comedy, as you know, John, was very circumspect. You know, you couldn't. Jack Parr almost got sacked on his Tonight Show for using the words WC.
Wow.
NBC actually cut it out of the show because it was pre-recorded.
And you couldn't say words like pregnant.
That's right, yeah.
Now.
Sorry, Peter Cook and Dudley Moore?
Yeah.
We had lunch on a couple of occasions back in the 1970s, and I'm still getting over the lunches, actually.
Yeah.
But their audition of the One-Legged Man for the part of Tarzan is a comedy classic.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to play that a little later on, just like a minute excerpt from it. But that is one of the funniest. And
the two Ronnies, where the one I love is where he answers the question that was previous.
Yes, their version of Mastermind. Yes.
How hard would that be?
It is very clever.
Yes.
And then, of course, we go back. I mean, when you talk about the early days of IM2, we're talking about people like Buster Fadez, who I used to love because he had that lovely rubbery face.
And a lot of people underestimate the part that Joss Allen played in the whole thing, because Joss was Graham's first mentor, really, and Joss brought all these, as Graham used to say, he brought trunks of sketches from the Plaza North in those days. But of course, television is so consuming that they ran out after a couple of years, or 2 or 3 years, and that's when they got Hugh Stuckey and then Fred Parsons. So.
Yeah, and lots of funny stories about Fred Parsons, who had a most unfortunate stutter.
A lovely stutter, yes.
You got a funny story about his stutter that you can tell on air?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I used to always call him Kit Kat. Because if he was standing behind him in a queue at the canteen and he was ordering a Kit Kat, by the time he get through Kit, you knew there was another 20 minutes before he got Cat out. But there is one joke I would like to say.
All right, okay.
Just before I go.
This is your favourite joke, is it?
Well, it's not my favourite, but it's one I remember from the 70s.
Okay.
And it was to do with when the Governor-General dismissed his chef back in the 1970s. And it went, well, yesterday the Governor-General got rid of his chef, which makes him a cooksacker. This afternoon, the CEO of Coca-Cola retrenched some staff, which makes him a coke-sacker.
All right. Now, Mike, you are aware...
the head of Golden Poultry doesn't take it out on his wrist.
All right, thanks. Mike McColl Jones, we're hovering over the dump button there.
I know you were.
But, of course, you're professional to the end, and I know you're still writing, and God bless you. And
God bless you all.
And you're in the Melbourne Observer too, are you not, each week?
I am a little top 5. Yes.
All right, well, that's the first thing I turn to, so tell Ash that, and he'll be very pleased. Mike, thanks for taking time out on a Sunday night to have a chat with us.
A pleasure.
All the best. Mike McColl Jones there on Remember When, talking about all sorts of things to do.